Some researchers say, though, that because you can induce some of experiences like this using a drug like ketamine, it's an experience that happens in your brain, and that's why it's not real.
Right.
What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, for example, going back to food, it's not because I'm hungry, is let's say you pick up a strawberry, right? And you eat it. Is the strawberry real? Even though you have brainwave activity?
Yes.
Okay, so saying that something produces brainwave activity or is corroborated with brainwave activity does not render the experience not real, right? Right now I'm having brainwave activity, and this experience is as real as it comes, right? Now, I think the idea is, well, if you're claiming that the experience is beyond the brain in some way, and you still have some kind of brainwave activity, does that mean the experience is just physical, right? Well, the thing is that even if we go beyond the brain, we're still attached to the body and attached to the brain. So we shouldn't expect the brain to just be empty and vegetative. And it has a lot of autonomous functions and everything. So I don't think that's really a valid argument, right? Either way, it doesn't prove or disprove the out-of-body experience. I think these experiences have neural correlates. Yeah, sure. But for example, when you have a dream and you look at brainwave activity, you're not looking at the dream. You're looking at aspects, certain measurements of electrical activity at the time that the person is having the dream. So when a person is having an out-of-body experience, they will also have a different kind of brainwave activity happening at that time. You're also not looking at the OBE. And it doesn't prove that the OBE is real or not, or that the dream is real or not. What makes a dream not real? It's not the fact that there is or there isn't brainwave activity. It's the fact that if I dreamt that I won the lottery and I'm really happy during the dream, when I wake up, I'm going to be disappointed because it didn't actually happen. It's a subjective internal thing, right? But if I said something very rude to someone, I'm going to be relieved. Oh, thank goodness I didn't actually say that to that person. I don't have to apologize now. But if you are in an out-of-body experience and you meet someone and you were rude to them, and if they remember, you might have to apologize. It was a real encounter. That's what makes it different. So if you have some kind of information that was transferred and you can prove that it was transferred, if you observed something and then you can prove that what you observed was real, that's what makes it real or not real, not the particulars of the neural correlates or whatnot, right? So, and then the secondary aspect, not as important, is, of course, the first question is it real or not? It's very important. But what I've found is that people have found the out-of-body experience interesting and worthwhile to pursue, whether or not they think it's real, because they can achieve some of the other things we discussed, right? Insight, creativity, less pain, reduction in stress and anxiety. So I think it's worth it for all those aspects, right? Health and creative and performance aspects. But if it can be a window into the afterlife, into the inner realms of consciousness, then that's the cherry on top, isn't it? But yes, I think whether it's real or not, it's a very important question. It can only be pursued by attempting to collect evidence that you can corroborate and that cannot be explained by any other means. And that's something that's difficult to capture in a camera, but can be done in a controlled environment. For example, IAC researchers have set up experiments like that, and others as well in the past, where you can set up a target where there are, for example, objects or random images that are selected by a computer from a database, and that room is completely sealed, right? Nobody can actually find out what it is. So the more random, and if the selection is random and there's nobody involved in the selection of either the objects or images, it's even better. So it can't even be transferred telepathically or anything like that. And then you are asked to go into this room and see the image, draw it, and so on. You do this enough times, and you start collecting evidence that people are able to make an accurate observation that's almost impossible to just guess, all right? So if you have a database with hundreds of images and you get the right image, you can calculate what are the odds that you pick the right one if you knew the whole database. But actually, most people don't even know the database. It could just be anything, a picture of anything. And they can get with photographic precision what the image was. Can they do it every time? No. But the fact that you get more hits that can be explained by pure chance, that should be enough. But again, how much funding is there for this kind of research? It's minimal because it's not valued in today's world. But if we did fund more of this type of research, we could easily, I think, come up with this evidence. But then the question would be, once you had this evidence, would it change the world? I fear it wouldn't, because people have to have their own experience. There's just no replacement. So while we should pursue this research, we should at the same time find ways to make it more accessible. Now, there's different technologies. For example, you might be able to beam a part of the brain with some kind of electromagnetic pulses that might do the trick, as long as they don't have to cut my skull open to make it happen. I'm willing to try it as long as it doesn't have long-lasting effects, right? And that's the problem with some of the drugs that you take, is I just don't know if it has these long-term effects. So because I don't know, I've avoided it. I've never done any of that because I've found ways to do it that don't involve ingesting a substance. So I'm not judging someone who has. Just personally, I just have found that, well, some of them are illegal, first of all. Also, professionally, I cannot take any drug because of the work I do requires me to be lucid at all times. I'm not talking just the consciousness stuff, I'm talking about working with high voltage electricity and things like that. So it's not really an option for me anyways. But also, it's just this concern about my brain. I don't want to do anything that might affect this very fragile connection, right, that we have. But also just because just with applying techniques with breathing, with concentration, so on, I've been able to achieve it anyways, right? But in the future, I'm open to the idea that there might be a way, biochemical, technological, that without long-term impacts, might just trigger this aspect. But again, that wouldn't prove that it's not real. I mean, we are not arguing that the brain exists. We're not arguing that the brain acts as a transceiver between the larger consciousness, say, and the physical awareness. So therefore, if the brain is acting as a sort of transceiver, why shouldn't we be able to do something to the brain that brings on the OBE? Right? So I don't think it's contradictory at all. And in fact, I think that's what will happen in the future. We will find ways to trigger the OBE more often. One of our colleagues is a neuroscientist in Mexico, Dr. Bernal. He presented at one of the events the IAC puts together periodically, the ICC, the International Congress on Consciousness. And he came up with a technique where he's monitoring brainwave activity. And at that moment, the person reports having the OBE, he found a sort of a signature that's typical in brainwave activity. And he would then have the person be exposed to a smell that is unusual, that you don't get all the time. And later on, he exposed the person to the same smell, and it facilitated getting to that same neural state, which then facilitated having the out-of-body experience. It's a fascinating technique. So I hope we just can keep having more of these techniques, combine them, and then just have like super technique. What I found though is that there is no universal technique that works for everyone the same, because some people are more visual, some people are more susceptible to hypnosis or self-hypnosis than others. So we just have to learn a broad range of techniques, see what works for us, combine it into our own, give it our own twist, and then we go from there. That's why the IAC teaches this, like I think 16 different types of techniques. And so for me, breathing techniques work really well, but also just I learned to relax without falling asleep right away, and then just kind of allowing things to happen. And also the idea that learning about the best time to try the OBE, when my body is ready to sleep but my mind can still be awake. I also use a kind of a trick that I incorporate into the app, the Numa app, where you basically set alarms that are consecutive so that you can kind of fall asleep, wake up, fall asleep, wake up, and just play with that hypnagogic period and get to the point where essentially you are deep, your body is deep asleep, your mind slightly awake, and then the out-of-body experience takes place on its own. So I think that's something anyone can try.